So let's talk about the cosmology as understood by Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism. In the case of Christianity, there is one God, but there is an existential duality. And Islam believes the same. There is one Allah, and there is duality. And I'll come to what duality means. It really is a distinction between the creator and the created. So in Islam, the Khuda and Khudai are different. In case of Christianity, similarly, there is God who created the world or the universe, and then the created, which is really everything else. So there's a clear dichotomy, there's a clear distinction. The two are not the same, they don't mix and intermingle. God doesn't come to earth, for example. So there is that cosmology point. Hinduism, on the other hand, believes it takes it one level up. So God is one, but then everything is one. And that's the Advait philosophy. So it believes that everything is one, but the outward manifestation is different. And then we'll see more examples of that. But essentially, plants and animals and humans and devtas, they're all different manifestations of the same one entity. Second point is time. So what is the view of time when looked from each of these systems? In Christianity and Islam, again, it's very, very similar. In fact, I would say identical view of time, which is a linear time. So God creates the universe, time begins, and then there is an end of time, which is called by different names. But when the time ends, after that, there is afterlife. So there's clear distinction between life and afterlife. And time is linear, so afterlife is indefinite. There is no end to it. Life has a time bound. So there's T1, from T1 to T2, let's say life begins. And life is collective life. It's the entire, not just individual life. So it's not like some person was born and he's dead now. It's the entire humanity, or the entire living beings start at T1 and end at T2. After T2 is afterlife. And that's it. It's a linear scale. In Hinduism, time is cyclical, so it's completely, a very different cosmological idea. Time is cyclical, and life and death are continuous. They happen in a never-ending cycle. Third point is related to the creation. So again, both Christianity and Islam have an identical story. It basically deals with God creating human beings, starting with Adam and Eve. In Allah, in case of Islam, they're called Adam and Hawa. So here terms about like Baba Adam ke zamane ka hai kuch. So that really goes back to the story of Adam. In Hinduism, it's physical worlds are created by Brahman and are destroyed repeatedly, but Atman is never destroyed. So again, that's the sort of view on creation. Now, this particular point is linked to exogamy and inbreeding or incest. And if you accept the conclusion, if you accept the premise that all human beings began with a single, sort of one man and one woman, you cannot escape the conclusion from the premise that there would be a lot of inbreeding. You would be marrying your close relatives, et cetera, et cetera. And the other point is, the opposite of that is exogamy, which I will discuss. So this leads us to a sort of a slight sidetrack, but I think it's important to underscore the point. So let me take you on a side story of genetics, how genetics works. So everybody understands, like the very basics of DNA and chromosomes and how you've got your genes. So let's break that down a little bit. So human beings have 3 billion base pairs in their genome, in the DNA. This DNA is divided into 23 pairs of chromosomes. But we can put the chromosomes to the side. Just think about the base pairs. So we've got 3 billion base pairs in this DNA, which is composed of individual genes. Now, what is a gene? A gene essentially codes for a biomolecule called protein, and protein really is something that determines your entire life functions, including your digestive enzymes, your neurotransmitters. They are everywhere, hormones, et cetera, et cetera. There are about 100,000 different kinds of proteins that a human body has. So why am I telling you all this? Remember I talked about pairs, 23 pairs of chromosomes. Why do we have a pair? So one copy comes from your mother, the other comes from your father. Each gene in the human body has, it comes in pairs. So there are two copies of a gene. So that's nature's sort of redundancy, if you will. If one gene goes bad and it cannot code for the protein, which is essential for a certain life function, then your body can rely on the second copy of the gene and recreate and continue, and this happens all the time. You'll be surprised how many times gene mutations occur and go unnoticed, or they are irrelevant because there's a dominant allele versus recessive allele. So life goes on because of this redundancy that is built in. However, in the case of people marrying their close relatives, because in your close relatives, the DNA sequence will be very much like your brother or sister or cousin, etc. And the offspring who inherits these chromosomes from their parents, if both, chances are higher that both of these parents will have the same defective gene, and hence the offspring does not have this fallback mechanism and is more likely to suffer the consequences of a gene failure, and hence cannot make a protein, and hence a certain life function cannot function. Anyhow, this is like a side story, but an important conclusion, important sort of a result of the story of Adam and Eve. And you can see in cultural practices how certain cultures embrace, or they are okay with having marriages which are between closely related people. In Islam, you say, "Ghar ki zinat ghar mein reh jaye to acha hai." In Christianity, you have the concept of kissing cousins. In the case of Hinduism, Hindus follow exogamy. So in certain parts, it's basically different from in every region of India. But the essential idea is that you do not marry within your close community. All right, so that was a sidetrack. Let's get back to our main topic here, which is cosmology. So next point is the transcendence versus immanence. So this is one of the most important points, and I hope you would, if you had like one takeaway from this talk under cosmology, you would have this, which is transcendence versus immanence. Now, what does that mean? Transcendence means God and his creation are completely separate and they do not mix. In case of Christianity, the only exception was Jesus, who was the Son of God, not quite God, but Son of God, who was sent in human form to earth through a virgin birth. So that's the only time, it's an exception that happened where the Son of God comes to planet Earth and mixes with regular humans. This is not going to happen again, and this is not repeatable. In Islam, it's even stricter. So Jesus is considered a prophet in Islam also, starting with Baba Adam. So Adam was the first prophet, and then you've got other prophets like Abraham and Moses, who's called Musa, etc., and ending in Muhammad, who was the last prophet. So all of these prophets in Islam are considered human beings. They don't have any God inside of them. They never talk to God even. So if you think about Muhammad, who was the most important prophet of Islam, when Quran was revealed to him, it was done through a messenger called Gabriel, who's considered one of the angels. So the point being, Allah did not interact even with prophet. So there is, Allah never comes to the earth, never interacts with the creation. So that's the transcendence. He lives in a different realm, different plane. Hinduism, on the other hand, has the concept of immanence. So all the beings are Satchit Anand, or Satchit Anand. Basically means the creator and the created are really one and the same. So this goes back to everything is one principle above. It's extremely important to realize and understand this difference. Otherwise, you'll miss the complete point of this talk. So immanence states that every human being has an ansh of the ultimate reality. You might call it God. God doesn't quite translate uh, into it's not the right term to use, I guess, in the system, but you get the idea. So there is just one entity which is present in every living being and even non-living beings. So that's the immanence property, which is very different from transcendence. The other aspect is the how the world is divided, or how the deeds are divided into good and bad. So in Christianity, the Boolean categorization is God versus Satan, good versus evil, order versus chaos, hell versus heaven, etc. Similarly, same thing in Islam. You've got certain things are halal, certain things are other things are haram. There is Momin versus kafir, etc. So there is categorization is Boolean. You're either this or you're not that, or you're not this. So it's like there's no middle ground. In case of Hinduism, fuzzy scale is employed at all levels with no strict boundaries, and everything is context sensitive. Even the entities which are considered ideals, like, for example, Bhagavan Krishna is considered to be the Purna Avatar with 16 Kalai, 16 Kalas. Even he is not perfect in that sense. Because if you consider how he died because of a shrap from Gandhari, and even he is not considered to be perfect in that sense. So yeah, the point being, fuzzy scale is employed. Everything is context sensitive. There is no one size fits all here. Christianity and Islam both have extreme discomfort with uncertainty and imperfection. That's why you hear terms like do it by the book, or I did it by the book. Same thing in Islam. In Hinduism, uncertainty and imperfection are accepted. They are accepted as part of life, and life goes on. The other point in cosmology is that God's laws are revealed via intermediary messengers and codified into books, into holy books that cannot be altered. We already talked about the messaging part, so God doesn't talk directly, is not accessible directly, but sends his messages through intermediaries called messengers or prophets, etc. And then those messages are codified into holy books, which cannot be altered because they are considered to be direct words of God. Same thing in case of Islam, pretty much verbatim. In Hinduism, there is a distinction between Shruti and Smriti. So Shruti is considered to be like the Vedas are Shrutis, which are direct sort of words of God. So that there we might find a correlation there. But Smriti, which is equally important, is context sensitive and time sensitive, which can be, Smritis can be recreated based on modern times, and that happens